Hello and welcome to podcast number 2 from what are we, the THC Tutors now?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir. The
Little
THC
name change.
Tutors. Yeah, we didn't like our last name. We put it together in a night, but
We'll
feels
do it on
realer
the
now.
spot.
Got a name we like, feels realer. So here we are. How's your day been, Giacomo?
It's been pretty nice, bro. I literally just woke up like a couple hours ago. Filled up my what's that shit called? Drew a blank.
You're sounding better. What'd you get, a new mic?
Yes, sir. I did get a new mic,
Yes,
but
sir.
damn, I
Hell
still
yeah.
can't remember what that shit's called.
Nice.
Anyways,
Wait, you
yeah, I
real
haven't done
about this or
much.
something?
What happened?
You real about this podcasting thing, letting people know the knowledge?
Yeah, bro. I'm pretty excited.
Okay.
We got some big things
Nice.
coming.
All right, guys. Well, I think everybody's going to be excited for today's episode. Today we are talking about training. We're doing, a short deep dive. We don't want to make it too long because you've probably heard a lot of things about training, and every type of training method that we talked about today, Google it. There is so much more to learn than what we tell you. There are so many different ways that you can do it. Today we're just going to do a quick overview of some different training methods. That's about it.
100%. So no, why don't you explain to the people what is training and why would a grower train?
So, what is training and why would we train as growers? So, shortly put, like, most of us have a plant count. And when we want to grow within that plant count, but still grow a lot of plants or still grow um, in our tent that we bought, we start having to train so that we can actually get a full canopy. So, think about getting more yield. That's why we train, the what is training? Really, training is a way of manipulating your plant and making it grow more yield. Most of the time, that is without degrading the quality of your plant. Almost all the time. There's never really a time where you're going to degrade your quality unless you're like tearing off buds. But we don't train in flower, and we'll talk about that a bit later. So yeah.
100%. So let's get right into like the types of training. So we have high stress and low stress training.
Yeah, do you know the difference between those two, Giacomo?
So I'm pretty sure low stress you want to run the low stress in earlier stages of the plant's life. Like you can run it relatively in like probably 2 3 weeks. You can start low stress training. Where the high stress training you probably would want your main stem to be a little bit thicker. If you were to super crop
Mhm.
or to mainline, you'd probably want a little bit more growth on your plant before you start like really stressing out the plant too
Girth on the
much
plant.
to where it stunts.
Yeah, I understand exactly what you're saying. Yeah, so really, I agree with everything you said. But there are some training techniques like topping in which you can do earlier, depending on if you're coming from a clone or if you're coming from a seed. Today, we will only be talking about coming from a seed, and every time stamp we have, we're going to base it on um, the seed's lifespan, not a clone's lifespan. So let's get right into it. Now, for those that didn't know, high stress and low stress, they're basically like think about they're different sides of training, but they have a bunch of different techniques for both of them. So, first one we're going to get into, and I think the most popular is topping. So, Giacomo, do you know what topping is? Can you tell me what topping is?
Topping is when you cut off the top one of the top node of your plant flush with one of the leaves, and you usually want to do it about like 3 to 4 nodes up the plant. So you don't want to do it too early, but you just want to cut it off, and then eventually it'll grow out two different main stems,
Mm-hmm.
almost every time. You're not really gonna have an anomaly there. It'll act the same every time you do a top. But when you do some fimming, that's when it gets a little bit unpredictable.
Yeah. Yeah. Topping a lot of people will top when they see um, 3 nodes, 2 to 3 nodes, and normally they're not thinking about keeping the nodes under where they topped. They're simply doing it so that they can get some nice structure on their plant, keeping it by and still keeping it low. So the plant doesn't grow super tall. A lot of us, especially when we're growing in tents, we don't want tall plants. So a lot of training techniques are going to help us keep those plants nice and short and stout, and still fill up the whole canopy and have a nice uh, depth into the crop. So it's going to give you a lot of yield if you do a lot of these training techniques properly. So the difference between fimming and topping, to simplify it for a lot of people, I would not fim at first because it's very hard and you need to know where nodes are. Fimming is basically where you're going to come out and you're going to get 4 nodes. You're cutting off the top node and you're going to come out with 4 nodes. So how that works is, it's normally when you, if anybody has grown cannabis before, they'll know that the top little ball of leaves is like just what I said, a little ball of leaves. It'll have the little leaflets sticking up vertically. What you're going to do is you're going to trim just the top leaf off, and then you're going to look in there and you're going to see the next node that's barely just starting to grow. And what you're trying to do is cut off the node on top of that one. So it's something that you have to be very careful with, very meticulous with. And most of the time when I've tried fimming, it just ends up in being a topped plant. So keep that in mind when, if you are trying to fim. It sounds really good on paper, but it's a lot harder than it sounds. So topping for me is something I do it on most of my crops, unless I'm doing a sea of green style, which we'll get into later. But that it's something that will, it's known, I think scientifically, that it will increase your yields by a good margin. So yeah.
Interesting. I agree with everything you said there. But let's get into another very and known around all the gardening community: trellising and scrogging.
Yeah, which are basically to the exact same thing. Have you ever tried trellising or scrogging before?
Yeah, so right now I have 2 scrogs
Hmm.
on my grow.
So just two
Um,
layers, right?
yeah, just 2 layers. One was a little bit earlier on when I did my first when I super cropped the first time on my first plant, and then I dropped another scrog on top of that one when I wanted to train a little bit of like some low stress training, tying down with some other branches that just grew from stretch.
Yeah. Yeah, and most of the time I hear it in the community where it's, they say when you're doing scrogging, just as you're doing it basically, Giacomo, is when you're doing scrogging, your first layer to 2 to 3 layers. Your first layer is for support. Your second layer is for yield. So what that means is, normally when we're putting on our first layer, it's not really about training it. But when we put on that second layer, now we're really going to start weaving it through the trellis net. And to summarize it all, because we've kind of just talked about our personal experiences, all all trellising is getting a net, or it could be metal chicken wire or something like that, putting it over top of your horizontally over top your canopy, and it's going to make you be able to have a really flat canopy. If anybody's seen pictures from commercial grows, those nets that go through them, that is a trellis, and what they are doing there is scrogging. Most of the time in commercial, you're going to have 3 layers, and how they do it there: first layer support, second layer's yield, third layer support again, because they're getting such big buds that you need to have 3 layers of trellis so that third layer can support just the sheer bud girth and the bud size. And that brings us quickly into another one, which is vertical trellising, which you will find a lot of times outside. And that's when people put trellises like a fence around their plants, and then their plants will stick through the sides. It's done a lot with tomatoes, for instance, and the plant will stick through and the buds will come out the side, and you can really get a nice canopy, and then you can get in there and basically cut everything out and just have a hollow outside full, or inside, with the outside being full of buds. So really, really nice.
I agree. So let's jump into something else. before we get into the more complicated things, let's talk a little bit about super cropping, which I've
Definitely.
recently just successfully did my first super crop. I tried it on my first grow,
Hmm.
completely killed my first plant trying to super crop. I completely killed the stem.
And how'd you do that? Like, how'd you go about? Because people would be nervous. I mean, I would be nervous if I heard, "Wow, you almost killed your plant." It must be really high stress. So what makes it almost kill your plant?
So you gotta when you once your stem is thick enough, probably 5, 6 nodes up when you have some bulk on your stem. Super cropping is basically pinching your stem, hearing it break down in the inside layers, not the outside layers. You want to break down the inside of it because the inside of the stem's hollow. So you want to hear a nice little snap. And once you hear that snap, you can slowly start bending your stem into like a 90-degree angle almost. And once you get it to the 90-degree angle, you're gonna probably want to get a rope or a little like a you can use hemp wick or something,
Hmm.
and just tie it to like the tip of your stem, and tie that to like I don't know somewhere in your pot or something. I just put a hole in
Hmm.
my pot and tied it to my
Like a
pot.
tie down kind of.
Yeah, exactly. You want to tie it down because if you don't, it's just gonna bounce right back up.
And it'll make that knuckle where the
Exactly. Over
90-degree
time,
angle is.
yeah, it'll make the knuckle over time, and it'll provide a lot more support on your plant
Hmm.
for when you
And
start
that
putting weight on it.
when people do outdoor grows, a lot of times you'll see them go in there and they'll do a few toppings when that plant's young, and by the second month they're just super cropping, super heavy. And Giacomo basically summed it up very simply. Like we said, go look at a video before you do this. Don't just listen to us and do this. Find one that interests you a lot and then go to the internet and see pictures, see videos of people doing this. There's all types of how to's out there on how to trellis, how to scrog, how to top. And us saying, oh, it's how you can trim this and whatever. It's like, well, we can't give you a visual representation of that. So I recommend going out there and seeing what this is and how it's actually done on a video or something. But what we can tell you here is it's going to add to your plant a lot more um, structure, and it's going to be able to hold up. I mean, I've seen people that super crop and they'll hold up pounds, on their plant
Yeah.
outdoors. It'll make a huge knot. If you've ever seen a knot in a tree, basically the same, it's done the same way, but it's naturally done. And huge knots will support huge trees. So that's what we want.
Yeah. So can you explain? I just recently looked up mainlining. So could you explain how to properly mainline?
Hmm. So mainlining is something that can be done with any type of training too. So most of these trainings, guys, as another disclaimer, is they can be done together. So you can top, then you can super crop, then you can scrog. You can do whatever you want, right? So mainlining is done a lot of times when you're doing topping, and you're gonna top it. And the definition of mainlining is having one line, one bud. So if I have a stem, you're going to mainline up to the top bud. So if we're going to top that, well, now we're going to have two buds, right? So if we top that again, now we're going to have four buds, And every time
Mm-hmm.
we do that, we're going to have more buds. But the only buds that we're going for are the very top buds because scientifically, we found that the highest cannabinoids and the most consistent cannabinoids over the whole plant will be with the top growth, the top flowers. So that's why people mainline, and it works a lot of time. A lot of people will get high quality, but you're not getting the depth into the canopy that a lot of growers seek for when they're going. You're going to get a few ounce in a 2x2. You'll get maybe 2 or 3 ounces of super high quality stuff. Whereas you can shoot for 4 to 5 ounces in a 2x2 if you're really pushing depth in your canopy. So it just depends what you're going for. Again,
100%.
you're going to get a lot of quality from a main line.
And I really like the point that you made that you can use all of these techniques, consecutively one after another. There's
Hmm.
not really a specific order you need to use them in.
Absolutely not. It again, just like we said on our first episode, it's all situational. It's what your garden needs at right now. Some people, I mean, a lot of times I look at gardens and I like the symmetry. I like to see if we're in a 2x2, I'd like to see two plants and two plants, or one plant and one plant. They each have 2 square feet. Well, now there's people that see a 2x2 and they throw three plants in there, and then it just throws stuff off. But for a lot of people now, they just do a little bit of different training and they'll still have a super full canopy, just like me, who tried to go for this like consistent symmetrical sides and stuff like that. But it's what goes best with your garden. And for me, it's symmetry. For other people, they don't need that. They're just going to shape their garden however they need to shape their garden. And that's why we train.
100%. You just train it to fit your needs, you know?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So yeah, so let's get into another one. We've gone through what I think 2 high stress and 3 low stress, which we're all trellising. One that we haven't talked about, but it's probably the one that I would recommend most beginners start with this training method right here. And that is the LST tie down, low stress training tie down technique. That is probably one of the best techniques if you want quick growing plants.
100%. I could not agree more. I did this on my first grow, and it definitely helped salvage it from my butchered attempt at super cropping it. So I would say it's pretty easy
Yeah.
for a beginner to figure it out.
Yeah, and when we were talking about the super crop and then tying it down, it's tying down is kind of the same thing. So I'm not going to get too deep into this, too scientific with auxins and gibberellins and all that stuff, the actual scientific hormones and stuff. But basically, when think about it like this, right? You have a plant and it's in the corner of your grow tent. The light is on the top of your grow tent going to the middle because you're trying to have equal light for everywhere. So the spot that has the corner is going to get less light than the spot in the middle for that one plant that's in the corner, right? So if we turn that plant around, it'll get the same light. But what we can also do is we can tie that plant down so that more light can get on more surface area, right? So tie it to the side of your pot and it's going to elongate your plant, making more surface area, be able to see or be able to get photosynthesis from the light.
Exactly. It'll just promote other branches, to seek and stretch to the light.
Hmm. And can you walk people through, since I mean, this is actually one where, yeah, you could watch a video, but it is very simple where if you want to go out and do it, you could go out and do it. So Giacomo, could you tell us how you did it the very first time you LST'd, how exactly, walk us through exactly how you did it.
Um, I had some hemp wick lying around in my house, and I was like, I'm just gonna low stress train this plant. I haven't, I might as well. I watched like a couple of videos on YouTube, like Noah said, just multiple people just trying to see how everybody did it, seeing what everybody else did wrong, to try and improve and learn from their mistakes. And I just basically I tied like a little tiny, I think I tied like a square knot on the top of the plant and grabbed a screwdriver and poked a hole through my pot,
Hmm.
and then I kind of just tightened it from the pot. I just slowly pulled lightly with my left hand on the top on the string that was connected to the top of the plant,
Hmm.
and then I would tighten it on with my right hand on the other side of the pot until I felt it was like tight enough for it to be like not stressing out the plant too much. Then I tied that off, and then over the next couple of days, you can keep tightening it a little bit more if your plant seems to react well to it.
Hmm.
But I think then I just left it because I was a little too nervous.
Yeah. And that, you touched on something right there that was, you said, I watched videos and I made sure I didn't want to make the mistakes of other people. One of the biggest mistakes I see with low stress tie down is that you don't know where to go once you've tied it down once. So what I
Mhm.
recommend what people do is either most of the time this is what I've done and it's worked the best for me is I have 4 holes and each side of the pot. So, opposite sides, 2 holes and 2 holes on opposite sides. And you're going to move it every 2 days. I would move it when it's tiny. You can do this when the plant is 1 or 2 weeks old. If you can get a little tie around it and tie it to the side of something, you can do it very early. And what I do is I'll move it every 2 days. I'll just move it clockwise around the pot. A lot of people will literally do however many days they're going to do LST for. They will put that many holes. I think that's a lot of work if you have, think if you have one plant, sure, drill a bunch of holes. But if you have 6 plants going at once, which is a lot of people's legal limit, that's a lot of time you're putting into drilling, I don't know, 28 holes around that pot so
Yeah,
it can slowly work its way around. I don't think that's necessarily worth it. So see what it's worth it for you. And I think it's more, LST is going to be the most compatible with everybody's setup. With auto flowers, regulars, feminized seeds, it'll be the most compatible with you.
100%.
So yeah, another to get on to another really, really, really easy. I don't even want to call it a training style. I kind of want to call it a growth style, and that is the Sea of Green method. That is when we are packing a lot of plants into a tiny area. Well, you're doing a one plant in a 2x2. Well, let's do 4 plants in a 2x2. You know, that'll get
Hmm.
you more yield. You can have smaller plants. You could do 1 gallon pots, maybe, you know, and you can grow a lot of biomass since you're going to have more plants, more energy going through that tent.
100%. The only thing you're gonna have to keep in mind when running a sea of green is either A, you're gonna have to be in your tent
Hmm.
almost daily, if not multiple times a day, to water your tiny pots. Because when your plants get bigger, they're gonna start drinking a lot of water, or you're gonna have to set up a automated irrigation system,
Hmm.
which we
Definitely.
will touch on another video eventually. It might be in a couple videos, but
Mhm.
it will it will make your life a lot easier to have an automated irrigation system.
Yeah, but they're an investment, and I think for a beginner grower, automated irrigation is not something you should be looking into yet. I think, again, like I said last video, start to love the plant first, and then you can invest in your hobby.
100%. Just something to keep in mind, you know. You just have to
Exactly.
be close to the grow at all times. You know, you can't be going on
Yeah.
vacations and stuff.
Oh yeah. I mean, if you have one plant, you have one plant. If you have 4 plants, that's 4 times the problem. You know,
Exactly.
so you also have to think about it that way. And running in Sea of Green, we're just going to say the Dutch table, basically the same thing. But you can look it up on Google. There are a couple rules. If you ever look at a dispensary, almost every single dispensary, unless they have some type of weird plant count regulation, they are doing a Sea of Green style small pot up to 3 gallon pots. They're putting them nice and close together in a nice, 5x5 area or a 5 foot rolling bench. And they're crushing it. They're crushing it. Um, Dutch table is when we go even smaller. That's when basically um, it's going to be a drain to waste style of irrigation. You can do, or not drain to waste, recirculating style of irrigation, but you can do drain to waste if you want. And I think the maximum on pots, so they go based on square foot, right? And for Sea of Green, you can have a plant per like 3 square feet, and it's counted as Sea of Green. When we're doing uh,
Dutch
the
table.
Dutch table, sorry, it's gonna be like 3 plants for every square foot. So it's the exact opposite way, you know? So
Hmm.
you're getting a lot of plants in there. Normally, when you see this, you're going to see people with the red, solo cups, the party cups. They're doing it in those, or they're doing it in 1 liter containers, or in the little plastic cocoa containers that the cocoa comes in. Most people don't grow in those, but they'll grow in they're little cocoa squares,
Yeah, almost
and
like
they're
the little
less than a
Rockwell
gallon.
squares.
Yeah, they're like half a liter in
Interesting.
medium. That is definitely it's more of a style than a training technique, but it's something that I think everybody should look into, especially beginners, because it is something really cool. And I think it's the simplest way, Dutch table and SOG, simplest way to get more yield in your garden. Add more plants.
100%. 100%. And it will give you more what am I trying to say? It'll give you more flexibility and leeway in screwing up a couple plants. You know, if you have 15, 20 plants, you know, you can kill one or two of them, you
Oh
know.
yeah,
If
definitely.
you're only running a 2 plant setup and you kill one, you know,
Mm-hmm.
that's half your yield gone like that.
100%. Yeah,
You know,
that's a
it's
difficult day.
detrimental, you know.
Yeah,
That
that's a
hurts.
difficult day. And listen, a lot of times when they go out on these Dutch table methods and plants die, it's not even your fault. It's
Hmm.
not even your fault as the grower because maybe a dripper gets clogged, you know? But
Yeah.
you can't deal with that. And again, what Giacomo said, it's it's a percentage game, especially when we're going and we're looking at commercial stuff. It's a percentage game. If I have two engines on an airplane, I'm safer than if I have one, because I
Yeah.
can still fly with one engine, you know? So, yeah, basically, yeah, I mean Dutch table, those two methods, more commercial based, look into them. The simple they but again, that is as simple as the tie down. It is so simple just to say, I'm going to grow more plants.
It is simple. It is a lot more work, you know, for every plant you add, it's just double the work.
Yes, exactly. And again, for all these training methods, I recommend you go Google them further if you are interested in doing them. I'm going to do a really short run through right now of the things like from easiest to hardest uh, training. All right. So I'm going to start out and I'm going to say LST. Everybody out there on their first plant should try LST on their first plant. It's not that hard.
Mhm.
Second, I would do topping. It's the second thing I did again. It's something that once you learn it and you get it down, you are going to be able to improve the yield tenfold on your garden. All right.
Yeah.
Next, after that, and this is one that Giacomo just recently did, I would learn how to super crop. And I think there's a lot of people out there against super cropping, but if you really do have a plant count and you want to grow big plants in a small area, super cropping is how you're going to get the depth into your canopy with still being able to hold it up. If you're
100%.
really good at super cropping, you don't have to trellis, you know?
Yeah.
You
It's
can.
crazy.
I'm not stopping you from trellising. A lot of people still do, but you don't have to. It can hold its own weight up.
Yeah, I feel like I could pull off my trellises and just cut them off right now. My plants would be
Hmm.
fine.
It'll grow up. So
Mhm.
yeah, and then after that, just like we were saying right there, I would go out and invest in a trellis setup. So that's another thing about getting a trellis is it's not just some ropes. You have to go out and probably spend about $20 on a net. Not that much, but it is some cost there. All these other methods, super crop, you need nothing. Tie down, you need a string
Yep.
and something you could poke holes with. So
Screwdriver works.
yeah, so a trellis is where you're gonna have to really put in a little bit of investment and get a nice. I would recommend for the first person starting out with a trellis, do the 6-inch trellis netting
Mhm.
and put that in your garden, and yeah, that go on with that. Next, and under as a disclaimer, under the trellising, I would put vertical trellising and scrogging, basically the exact same thing. All right. Next, after that, I would put fimming. All right. It is something that I've seen people pull off in small grows and pull it off. I mean, the crazy yields off of these little plants.
Yeah, I plan on trying to do this in like 2 months. I think I'm gonna try to
Hmm.
film my next plants.
And it's hard, but it's something that is definitely doable.
It's worth the risk, I would say for sure.
Yeah,
If you can pull it
definitely.
off properly, I think it's definitely worth the risk.
Hmm. Definitely. And then we're going to get into the two styles, which is SOG and mainlining. And the only reason I say these are the hardest is because you really do need more investment, more
Mhm.
pots, more plants, maybe more lights. I don't know how you're doing it. Um, Maybe an automated irrigation system. And this stuff, we're not, now we're getting out of like a $20 trellis,
And
now we're on to hundreds of dollars that you could be potentially putting into your automated irrigation system.
and I want to say the biggest part of those types of growing is just the amount of time you're gonna have to put into those.
Hmm.
You're gonna have to be
Unless
there
you
a lot.
spend, unless you spend even more money on automation
Exactly.
tools. Like
But if you're a beginner grower,
you
you're
don't
not
want to
even
spend
thinking
that
about
money.
that. You're not even thinking
Yeah,
about that right now. Just
exactly.
focus on your couple plants.
Hey,
Learn how to
I'll
grow
be
your couple
honest,
plants.
as a grower that's been here for a minute now, it would be really nice to have something that would just you plug it in and it works. But that's
Yeah.
not how the garden works.
Yeah.
You know, your
No, it's a lot of
garden,
trial and error.
your garden is 100% different than the garden that they trialed this product on. It doesn't matter if it's a fertilizer, a fan, anything like that. So you have to make that product work for you every time you buy a product.
100%. I agree.
So yeah, I mean that ties it up for me. A little short one today, getting it out to the people.
Yeah. Keeping it short today, just a little. I wouldn't say deep dive, but a little scratching the surface on just all the different types of training that there is.
Yeah. And I think you guys, our audience, after listening to this, can go deep dive on the ones that you want to get into. I recommend seeing everything, but we all don't have the time on a day-to-day basis. So if you are just starting out and being a beginner grower, go look up LST. Go look up topping. If you've been here for a long time and haven't heard of super cropping, definitely recommend you look that up. Um, and if you are more on the commercial side, trying to maybe make some money in the space, go look up SOG. Go look up those Sea of Greens. Because if
Hmm.
you're like the guy who's like, I want hash plants, but I grow big, big hash plants, it's like, well, maybe if you cut down and have more runs every year, getting faster to bloom every year, you're gonna get more money every year. you know
Hmm.
so there's other
100%.
things in these training methods and growing methods, but the most is your situation,
And
as always.
if you guys want a real deep dive on one of these training methods, leave a comment, let us know, and
100%.
we'll definitely do a deep dive on a couple of these if you guys are really interested.
Yeah, again, bringing you guys on topic, you guys are the community. If we sound off, if there's something that like you don't like, if it's me saying like a lot or me saying right a lot, that comes from my Western heritage. But if you want that, you got to let us know, because some things we just listen to ourselves and we're like, damn, that's a good voice. you know, we don't necessarily hear the bad parts per se.
Hmm. So what are you thinking on the next podcast, Noah?
The next podcast, I think people should be tuning in. I am really I'm really wanting to get into some irrigation things. However, Giacomo isn't very educated right now on the irrigation techniques
Not
and
yet.
stuff like that. So that one might be something that we wait on. I also know that crop steering in general is something very, very, a very hot topic. So maybe I'm thinking, especially for beginner grower, maybe an IPM, a little IPM talk. Maybe the
Okay.
same as we did today, 30 minutes summing down IPM for
Okay.
the people.
I think that'd be dope.
Yeah, maybe just going into a few products we've used, which ones work differently, and I think the people would love that.
All right. Well, Noah, that wraps it up for me.
Awesome. I mean, yeah, that's about all I got to say about that. It's been a great day.
100%.
Hopefully, some people got some knowledge from this one.
I agree.
We should be back next week, y'all.
Yeah, maybe even twice this week. Who knows?
Yeah, twice this week. Who knows? I
It
mean,
was a short one.
yeah, exactly. And Giacomo and I are getting on a schedule here soon where hopefully we'll
Yeah.
be able to get these out to you guys regularly and consistently. And tune in. Tune in. It's getting real.
We might live stream the next one as well.
Oh yeah, definitely. And post from there, do face cams and post from there. So
Yeah, on
face reveal.
YouTube. Yeah, that's gonna be exciting.
Heck yeah. Well, Giacomo,
Alrighty.
you have a great day.
You too, Noah.
And everybody out there, happy growing.
Yes, sir. Peace.